Bella stopped pushing and turned her head toward the last puppy as if she already knew something was terribly wrong. The delivery room at Cedar Oaks Animal Clinic had been quiet except for the soft hum of fluorescent lights and the steady rain tapping against the windows. It was 2:13 on a Thursday morning, and Rachel Carter had not taken her eyes off Bella for nearly 6 hours. The golden-brown shepherd mix lay on a stack of clean blankets, her sides trembling with exhaustion, her dark eyes fixed on each newborn as though counting them over and over again. 5 tiny puppies were already pressed against her belly, warm and wriggling, each one letting out the thin squeaks Rachel had been praying to hear all night. Rachel brushed a damp strand of hair from her forehead and finally allowed herself to breathe. "You did it, sweetheart," she whispered, her voice breaking with relief. Bella responded with a low, protective whine and gently licked the smallest pup, pulling him closer with her front paw. For the first time since Rachel had rescued her from the shoulder of Route 41 3 months earlier, Bella seemed to believe she was safe. Then another contraction rippled through her body. Bella stiffened. Her ears flattened. A sound escaped her throat that Rachel had never heard before, not a cry of pain, but a tense, almost urgent warning. Dr. Nathan Brooks stepped closer from the stainless steel table where he had been preparing fresh towels. Nathan was a veterinarian with 15 years of experience and the kind of calm presence that made frightened animals settle almost instantly. Tonight, however, even he seemed unusually focused. "One more," he said softly, kneeling beside Bella. "Just one more, girl." Bella's breathing quickened. Her paw stretched over the 5 nursing puppies as if shielding them. Rachel noticed her muscles tighten, and then, with one final push, the 6th puppy slid onto the blanket. For a moment, no one moved. The room seemed to hold its breath. Rachel leaned forward, expecting the same squeak, the same tiny wriggle. Instead, Bella raised her head and stared at the newborn with an intensity that sent a chill through Rachel's chest. The dog's nose touched the puppy once, then twice. She let out a sharp whimper and pulled back. "Nathan," Rachel whispered. The veterinarian did not answer. He reached for the puppy, wrapped it carefully in a towel, and held it beneath the warming lamp. His expression changed almost immediately. The color drained from his face. Rachel had seen Nathan deliver dozens of litters. She had watched him remain steady through emergencies that would have sent most people into panic. But now his hands froze. He bent closer, adjusted his glasses, and looked again as if hoping he had made a mistake. Bella began to growl, not at Nathan, but at the puppy itself. The 5 nursing pups stirred nervously against her stomach. Rain thundered harder against the clinic windows. Rachel stood so quickly her chair scraped across the tile. "What is it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Nathan swallowed, still staring at the newborn in his trembling hands. Then he took one slow step backward and said the 7 words Rachel would never forget for the rest of her life. "Rachel, these are not normal puppies." Rachel felt the blood drain from her face, but before she could ask another question, Bella let out a desperate cry and pulled all 6 puppies tightly against her chest. The growl in her throat deepened into something raw and protective, a sound that seemed to come from months of fear Rachel had never fully understood. Nathan lowered the newborn back onto the blankets and took a cautious step away, allowing Bella to curl her body into a trembling circle around her litter. Within seconds, the mother dog began licking the smallest puppy over and over, as if trying to reassure herself that he was real, that he belonged with the others, and that no one was going to take him away. Rachel sank to her knees beside the blanket nest, her heart pounding as she watched Bella's eyes dart from face to face. They were not the eyes of an aggressive dog. They were the eyes of a mother who had spent too long expecting the worst. 3 months earlier, Rachel had found Bella during her morning commute to the elementary school where she worked as a reading specialist. Traffic had slowed near mile marker 27 on Route 41 because of a summer thunderstorm, and through the sheets of rain Rachel noticed a dog standing beneath a flickering gas station sign. Bella was soaked to the skin, her ribs visible beneath her muddy coat, and her swollen belly left no doubt that puppies were coming soon. What Rachel remembered most was not Bella's condition, but the way she stood. Instead of begging for help or running toward the cars like most abandoned dogs, Bella kept turning her head toward the tree line behind the station, as if she was making sure something had not followed her. Rachel had crouched beside her with half of a turkey sandwich and spoken in the same gentle voice she used with nervous children. Bella approached slowly, every muscle tense, but the moment Rachel touched her shoulder, the dog collapsed against her legs with a shuddering sigh, so heavy it felt like surrender. From that day forward, Bella followed Rachel everywhere. She slept beside the washing machine in the laundry room. She sat quietly while Rachel graded spelling tests at the kitchen table. She rested her head on Rachel's lap each evening, as if confirming that this home was still there. And yet certain habits never changed. Bella startled at the sound of engines in the driveway. She refused to go near chain-link fences at the dog park. Twice, Rachel had awakened in the middle of the night to find Bella standing at the nursery window, staring into the darkness with her ears pinned back and her body rigid. During the final weeks of pregnancy, Bella became even more protective. She carried baby blankets from the linen closet into the laundry room and arranged them into a careful nest. She ate only when Rachel sat nearby, and every time Rachel reached toward Bella's stomach, the dog would lower her head and place one paw over her belly, as though shielding the puppies from invisible hands. Nathan had noticed the same behavior during checkups, but Bella's vital signs were always strong, and the ultrasound showed 6 healthy heartbeats. "Some mothers have been through more than we know," he had said at the time. Rachel had accepted that explanation, though one detail continued to bother her. The small patch of fur shaved away near Bella's shoulder revealed a thin scar Rachel could not explain, a straight line no longer than 2 inches. Bella hated when anyone touched it. Even now, as the storm rattled the clinic windows and the 6 newborn puppies pressed close to her body, Bella shifted just enough to cover that scar with her paw. For several long seconds, no one in the delivery room dared to move. Bella remained curled around her 6 newborns, her chest rising and falling in shallow bursts while the storm outside rolled across the Georgia sky like distant drums. Rachel expected the exhausted mother to settle once the puppies began nursing, but instead Bella lifted her head and did something she had never done before. She counted them. Her nose touched each puppy one by one in a precise circle, pausing for the briefest moment over the 6th. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then she returned to the last newborn and nudged him again. When she reached the end, she started over from the beginning, repeating the same pattern with almost obsessive focus. Nathan watched silently, his expression tighter with every pass. "She is checking them," he murmured, though his voice carried little comfort. Bella completed the ritual a 3rd time before finally allowing the puppies to nurse. For a few minutes, the room grew quiet except for the soft clicking of rain against the windows and the faint suckling sounds of the litter. Rachel exhaled and thought perhaps the worst was over. Then Bella gently lifted the 6th puppy by the loose skin at the back of his neck. Rachel sat upright. "What is she doing?" she whispered. Most mother dogs repositioned puppies occasionally, but Bella did not place him beside the others. Instead, she carried him to the far corner of the blanket nest and laid him alone, nearly 8 inches away from his siblings. She turned her body back toward the 5 remaining puppies and blocked the isolated newborn with her tail. The tiny pups squeaked and wriggled helplessly under the warming lamp. Rachel's heart tightened. "Bella, no," she said softly, reaching out. Before her hand could touch the puppy, Bella swung her head around and emitted a low warning growl. Unlike anything Rachel had heard from her before, it was not vicious. It was terrified. Nathan raised his hand, signaling Rachel to stop. "Give her a moment." Bella stared at the separated puppy with ears pinned flat and eyes wide. After nearly a minute, she approached him again. Rachel expected her to bring him back to the group. Instead, Bella pressed her nose against his chest, inhaled sharply, and began pacing in a tight circle around him. Once, twice, 3 times. Then she lay down beside him and wrapped one front leg around his tiny body, shielding him while keeping him apart from the others. The behavior repeated throughout the next hour. Each time the 6th puppy crawled toward his siblings, Bella would gently retrieve him and return him to his isolated corner. She licked him more often than any of the others. She whined whenever he squeaked. And each time Nathan stepped closer, Bella's muscles tightened until her entire body trembled. Rachel could not understand what she was seeing. Bella was not rejecting the puppy. If anything, she was guarding him more fiercely than the rest. But why would she keep him separate? Nathan reviewed the ultrasound images on the clinic monitor, zooming in and comparing measurements. He said very little, and that worried Rachel more than any explanation could have. Around 3:40 in the morning, Bella startled at a gust of wind that rattled the back door. In one fluid motion, she rose to her feet, gathered the sixth puppy into her mouth, and carried him away from the blankets. Rachel expected her to move to another corner of the room. Instead, Bella crossed directly to Nathan, stood inches from his knees, and placed the tiny newborn on top of his shoes. Then she lowered her head to the floor and pushed the puppy toward him with her nose, as if begging the veterinarian to see what she already knew. Nathan stared down at the tiny newborn resting on his shoes while Bella kept her head pressed to the floor, her whole body quivering with a silent plea. Rachel had never seen a dog surrender like that. Bella was not protecting herself. She was offering up the one puppy she guarded more fiercely than the others, trusting Nathan to understand what she could not explain. The veterinarian bent slowly and lifted the little pup into his hands. For several seconds he said nothing. He carried the puppy to the examination table beneath the brightest lamp in the room and adjusted the light until it shone directly across the newborn's damp fur. Rachel stepped closer, but Nathan raised his hand. "Stay back for a minute," he said, his voice unusually tense. Bella reacted instantly. She sprang to her feet and let out a sharp bark that echoed off the tiled walls. It was the first time Rachel had ever heard Bella bark at all. The 5 remaining puppies stirred and squeaked, and Bella rushed back to them, circling the nest in frantic, uneven steps. Her claws clicked rapidly against the floor. Rachel felt her chest tighten. "Nathan, you are scaring her." He did not look up. Instead, he examined the puppy with increasing concern, tracing a finger along its tiny chest and belly. Finally, he exhaled and removed his glasses. "Rachel, I think this puppy may need to be moved to intensive care." The words landed like a blow. Rachel turned toward Bella, who was now standing over the other 5 puppies with her legs spread protectively, ears flattened, and eyes wide with panic. "Moved where?" Rachel asked. "To the neonatal unit in the back," Nathan replied. "If what I am seeing is what I think it is, he will need constant monitoring." Rachel's first instinct was relief. Nathan was trying to save the puppy, but Bella seemed to hear only one thing. Someone was taking her baby away. The moment Nathan stepped toward the door, Bella darted in front of him and blocked his path. She did not snap or lunge. She simply stood there, trembling so violently that her legs shook beneath her. Her eyes locked on the towel in Nathan's hands. Rachel knelt and wrapped her arms around Bella's neck. "It is okay," she whispered, though she no longer believed it herself. Nathan hesitated. "I cannot examine him properly with her this distressed." Rachel looked from Bella to the tiny bundle under the lamp and felt trapped between 2 equally heartbreaking possibilities. If Nathan was right, the puppy needed help immediately. But if they separated him from Bella now, they might destroy the fragile sense of safety she had spent months building. Bella lowered herself to the floor and began making a soft, rhythmic sound deep in her throat. Rachel realized with a start that it was the same comforting hum Bella used whenever the puppies nursed. She was trying to call the newborn back to her. Nathan's expression hardened into professional resolve. "Rachel, I know this is difficult, but if we wait too long, we could lose our chance to understand what is happening." Bella crawled forward on her elbows, inch by inch, until her nose touched Rachel's knee. Then she looked up with an expression so pleading and human that Rachel felt tears fill her eyes. Nathan reached for the clinic phone and pressed a speed dial button. "Megan," he said to the overnight technician, "prepare the neonatal incubator and isolation room." Rachel's head snapped toward him. "Isolation?" she repeated. Nathan met her gaze, his face pale and deeply unsettled. "Until we know exactly what this puppy is, it may be safer to separate him from the rest of the litter." Rachel opened her mouth to protest, but before she could speak, something small slid from the towel wrapped around the newborn and landed on the stainless steel table with a soft metallic click. Nathan froze. The sound was so faint that Rachel might have missed it if the room had not gone completely silent. Even Bella stopped humming. Nathan carefully set the puppy beneath the warming lamp and leaned over the table. Resting beside a damp fold of cloth was a tiny silver capsule no larger than a grain of rice. Rachel recognized it instantly. "That is a microchip," she whispered. Nathan nodded, But his expression told her this was not an ordinary identification chip. The object was attached to a thread-thin strip of translucent material, almost like a narrow ribbon. Rachel had never seen anything like it. Nathan picked it up with gloved fingers and held it under the light. Etched along the side was a sequence of letters and numbers, so small he had to squint to read them. B7, he murmured. Then he turned the strip over and his brow furrowed. There was another marking, stamped beneath the code. 3 letters. ACR. Rachel felt a chill spread through her chest. What does that mean? Nathan did not answer immediately. Instead, he walked to the computer terminal and entered the code into the clinic database. No record appeared. He tried again using a national pet registry. Still nothing. The chip did not belong to any publicly registered owner. Nathan's jaw tightened. That should not happen, he said quietly. Bella rose from the blankets and approached the examination table. Her movements were slow, cautious, almost deliberate. Rather than lunging for the puppy, she lifted her nose to the silver capsule in Nathan's hand and released a low, trembling whine. Then she turned her head and touched her own shoulder, pressing the scar against the edge of the table. Rachel stared. Bella repeated the motion a second time, nudging the same spot beneath the shaved patch of fur. It was not random. She was drawing their attention to the scar. Nathan set the chip down and parted the fur over Bella's shoulder. Under the bright lamp, the old incision looked straighter and more precise than Rachel had ever noticed. It was the kind of scar made by a surgical procedure, not an accident. Nathan ran a handheld scanner over the area. The device emitted a sharp beep. Another implanted chip. Rachel felt her knees weaken. She has one too? Nathan swallowed. Yes, and if it matches this code, then Bella has been carrying a marker for years. He scanned the data onto the screen. The identification number began with the same letters. ACR. For the first time that night, Nathan looked less frightened and more deeply troubled. Rachel, he said, I do not think Bella was simply abandoned. Bella returned to the blanket nest and curled protectively around all 6 puppies, but she kept the unusual newborn tucked closest to her chest. Her breathing gradually slowed, as if she sensed that someone was finally starting to understand. Rachel sat beside her and stroked the fur between her ears. Bella leaned into the touch with exhausted trust. Nathan remained at the computer, searching through old veterinary forums and archived research listings. Minutes passed. Rain continued to batter the windows. Then Nathan stopped typing. He stared at something on the screen for so long that Rachel's pulse began to race. What is it? She asked. Nathan reached for the phone again, but this time his voice was no longer clinical. It was shaken with disbelief. I need to call a colleague at the University of Georgia, he said. Because if this code means what I think it means, we need to find out exactly where Bella came from before anyone decides to take that puppy away. Nathan stood motionless with the phone still in his hand as Professor Linda Mercer answered from the University of Georgia's College of Veterinary Medicine. She was one of the country's leading experts in canine genetics and had spent years consulting on rare congenital conditions. Nathan spoke in a low, urgent voice, reading the ACR code from both microchips while Rachel sat on the floor beside Bella, her fingers buried in the dog's damp fur. Bella had finally stopped trembling. She lay with all 6 puppies pressed against her belly, but the unusual newborn remained tucked beneath her chin, exactly where she could feel every breath he took. Nathan switched the call to speaker. For a few moments, the only sound was the tapping of Professor Mercer's keyboard. Then the woman on the other end went silent. Nathan, she said at last, her voice suddenly tight. Where did you find this dog? Rachel felt her stomach knot. Nathan explained that Bella had been rescued as a stray near Route 41 and had given birth less than 2 hours earlier. Professor Mercer exhaled slowly. ACR stands for Adaptive Canine Research, she said. It was a private breeding program shut down several years ago. Rachel glanced at Bella, who lifted her tired eyes as if she were listening. What kind of breeding program? Nathan asked. There was a long pause before Professor Mercer answered. They were studying whether certain dogs could detect rare metabolic disorders in newborn puppies before symptoms appeared. Rachel frowned. You mean like service dogs that can smell seizures? Exactly, Professor Mercer replied. Only this project focused on maternal instincts. They identified female dogs with unusually strong scent discrimination and protective behavior. Dogs that could sense microscopic chemical changes the rest of us could not. Nathan stared at Bella in stunned silence. Every strange behavior from the past few hours flashed through Rachel's mind. Bella isolating the sixth puppy, counting the litter repeatedly, placing the newborn at Nathan's feet, guarding him, but keeping him apart. None of it had been rejection. None of it had been fear. Bella had been trying to tell them that one of her puppies was different. Professor Mercer continued. The sixth puppy likely carries a rare metabolic mutation. It is not contagious, and it is not dangerous to the others. But untreated, affected puppies can become critically weak within the first 72 hours. If Bella separated him, she was probably trying to ensure he stayed warmer, received more attention, and was not pushed aside during nursing. Rachel covered her mouth as tears filled her eyes. Bella had not been singling him out because she distrusted him. She had been giving him every possible chance to survive. Nathan looked at the puppy beneath the warming lamp, then at the dog who had offered her baby to him with such desperate trust. She was asking for help, he whispered. Professor Mercer's voice softened. That is exactly what she was doing. Nathan quickly ran a bedside blood test, while Rachel held Bella's head in her lap. 20 minutes later, the results appeared on the monitor. The newborn's glucose level was dangerously low, just as Professor Mercer had predicted. Nathan prepared a simple treatment and returned the puppy to Bella's waiting paws. The mother immediately pulled him close and began licking him with quiet, relentless devotion. She had recognized the danger before any machine, any scan, or any trained veterinarian. Rachel bent over Bella and pressed her forehead against the dog's. You knew, she whispered through tears. You were trying to save him all along. Nathan removed his glasses and stood perfectly still, his face pale for an entirely different reason now. He looked at Bella, then at Rachel, and finally at the tiny puppy nursing safely beneath his mother's chin. For the first time that night, he understood that the bravest soul in the room had never spoken a single word, and yet she had led them to the truth from the very beginning. Rachel could not stop replaying every moment she had misunderstood Bella. The warning growl that had made her flinch, the restless pacing around the isolated puppy, the way Bella had carried him away from the others again and again. Each action that had seemed strange or alarming now appeared in a completely different light. Bella had not been confused. She had not been rejecting her baby. She had been doing what no human in the room had been able to do. She had recognized that one of her puppies was in danger and had spent every ounce of strength trying to keep him alive. Rachel lowered herself beside the blanket nest and sat cross-legged on the tile floor, no longer caring that her jeans were soaked from kneeling in spilled water and damp towels. Bella rested her chin protectively over the sixth puppy while he nursed in short, determined pulls. His tiny body already seemed stronger, and each swallow felt like a small miracle. Rachel placed her hand over her mouth as tears slid silently down her cheeks. She remembered the night she found Bella trembling in the rain beside the highway, looking over her shoulder as if she expected something terrible to emerge from the darkness. She remembered the sleepless nights, the pacing, the careful way Bella built her nest from borrowed baby blankets. At the time, Rachel thought she was comforting a frightened stray. Now she understood that Bella had been carrying a burden Rachel could not even imagine. She had been guarding 6 fragile lives while trusting only her own instincts. Nathan stood at the counter reviewing the blood test results, but his usual composure was gone. He removed the stethoscope from around his neck and set it aside as though it suddenly felt inadequate. I almost separated him from her, he said quietly. The words hung in the room with painful weight. Nathan was a veterinarian who had devoted his career to helping animals. Yet tonight, he had nearly taken a sick newborn away from the one being who understood him best. He walked to the blanket nest and knelt beside Bella until he was eye level with her. For a moment, he said nothing. Then he placed his hand gently over his heart and bowed his head, an instinctive gesture of respect. Bella studied him with tired amber eyes. The tension in her shoulders softened. Slowly, she extended one paw and rested it against his wrist. Rachel drew in a shaky breath. It was such a small movement, but it felt like forgiveness. Nathan's eyes filled with tears he did not bother to hide. You were asking us to trust you, he whispered. Bella responded with the same low humming sound she used to soothe her puppies. The vibration traveled through the blankets like a lullaby. Rachel leaned forward and kissed the top of Bella's head. I thought I rescued you. she said, her voice breaking. But tonight you taught us something none of us knew. The storm outside had begun to fade, and the first faint hint of dawn touched the clinic windows with pale blue light. The 6 puppies nestled closer to their mother, and Bella curled her body around them with quiet confidence. She no longer looked afraid. She looked understood. Nathan stood and wiped his eyes before turning to Rachel with renewed determination. "We are not letting anyone take this family apart," he said. "Not now? Not ever." Rachel nodded without hesitation. As Bella drew her special puppy closer and continued licking him with tireless devotion, both humans silently made the same promise. From this moment forward, they would do everything in their power to protect the mother who had saved her own child before anyone else even realized he needed saving. As the first light of morning spread across the clinic windows, Cedar Oaks Animal Clinic began to wake around Bella and her puppies. Megan arrived with fresh blankets, but instead of wheeling in the neonatal incubator Nathan had requested earlier, she quietly unplugged it and rolled it back into storage. No one said a word at first. The gesture itself felt like a promise. This family was staying together. Nathan spent the next hour transforming the delivery room into a protected nursery. He lowered the overhead lights so Bella would not feel exposed. He moved the warming lamp closer to the blanket nest and positioned a portable monitor beside her, allowing him to track the special puppy's blood sugar without removing him from his mother's side. Rachel drove to the 24-hour pharmacy across the street and returned with an armful of baby receiving blankets printed with tiny blue stars. Instead of placing them randomly, she arranged them in a wide circle around Bella's nest, creating a soft barrier that made the corner feel less like a medical room and more like a den. Bella watched every movement carefully. At first, her ears twitched with the same guarded tension Rachel had seen for months. But each time Nathan adjusted the monitor, he did so from his knees rather than standing over her. Each time Rachel replaced a towel, she let Bella sniff it before laying it down. Slowly, the fear in Bella's eyes began to fade. The 6th puppy remained tucked beneath her chin, while Nathan administered his treatment in tiny drops placed along Bella's fur, allowing the newborn to receive support without ever leaving the warmth of his mother's body. The arrangement seemed to astonish Bella. Every time the puppy swallowed and settled more comfortably, she looked up at Nathan as if verifying that he truly understood now. By 7 o'clock, the little pup's glucose levels had stabilized. His squeaks grew stronger. For the first time, Bella allowed him to crawl toward his brothers and sisters without immediately carrying him back. She still kept one paw resting lightly over his back, but the rigid urgency that had driven her through the night had softened into quiet vigilance. Rachel sat cross-legged beside the nest with a mug of untouched coffee cooling in her hands. She began reading aloud from the same children's book she used in her classroom, her voice low and rhythmic. Bella had always relaxed when Rachel read, and this morning was no different. The mother dog closed her eyes, though she did not fall asleep. She simply listened while 6 newborn puppies nursed against her belly in a warm, breathing cluster. Nathan completed the paperwork to register Bella and all 6 puppies under Rachel's name. In the notes section of the medical chart, he paused before typing a single sentence. Mother identified life-threatening condition before clinical detection. Rachel read the words over his shoulder and felt her throat tighten. It was the first official acknowledgement that Bella had not merely been a patient. She had been the one who saved her own child. A little later, Professor Mercer called back with additional recommendations. When Nathan thanked her, he glanced at Bella and smiled. "The real expert is already here," he said. By mid-morning, sunlight streamed through the rain-washed windows and turned the blue star blankets almost silver. Bella lifted her head and looked around the room. No one was reaching to separate her puppies. No one was questioning her instincts. The monitors beeped softly. The storm had passed, and every one of her babies was pressed safely against her. With a long, trembling exhale that seemed to release months of fear, Bella rested her head on Rachel's hand and drifted into the deepest sleep she had allowed herself since the day she first ran out of the woods. 3 weeks later, Rachel's laundry room no longer looked like the quiet space where Bella had once slept alone beside the washing machine. It had become a small world of soft blankets, heating pads, chew toys, and 6 growing puppies tumbling over one another in clumsy circles. Morning sunlight spilled through the window above the dryer, warming the blue star blankets Rachel had brought home from the clinic. Bella lay in the center of it all, her body relaxed in a way Rachel had never seen before. The constant tension in her shoulders was gone. Her ears no longer twitched at every sound in the driveway. For the first time since Rachel found her standing in the rain near Route 41, Bella looked like a dog who believed tomorrow would come without danger. The sixth puppy, whom Rachel named Chance, remained slightly smaller than his brothers and sisters, but he had become the most determined of the litter. He was always the first to wobble toward Bella and the last to stop nursing. Nathan monitored his progress every few days, and each visit ended with the same astonished smile. The little puppy Bella had singled out on the night of his birth was thriving because his mother had recognized what science could only confirm later. Professor Mercer visited once from Athens to meet the remarkable dog whose instincts had outperformed every machine in the clinic. She sat quietly on the floor while Bella approached and rested her chin on the professor's knee. After several minutes, Professor Mercer looked at Rachel and said, "We spent years trying to measure what this dog does naturally." Nathan eventually submitted Bella's case to a veterinary journal, but the sentence he treasured most remained the one he had typed in the medical chart that morning. Mother identified life-threatening condition before clinical detection. Rachel framed a copy of that note and hung it above Bella's bed. Friends who visited often paused to read it, then turned to the calm shepherd mix dozing beneath her puppies in amazement. Yet Bella herself seemed uninterested in the attention. Her greatest reward was much simpler. Every evening, after the puppies had eaten and drifted to sleep in a warm pile, Bella would walk to the back porch and sit beside Rachel on the wooden steps. They would watch the Georgia sky fade from gold to deep blue while cicadas hummed in the trees. Bella always kept one paw resting lightly against Rachel's foot, as if confirming that both of them were still there. One night, as Chance curled against his mother's side and the other puppies dreamed in a soft tangle of paws and tails, Rachel remembered the fear in Bella's eyes when Nathan first suggested taking her baby away. She thought about the countless ways humans had doubted her, the growl that seemed threatening, the pacing that looked obsessive, the separation that appeared cruel. Every act that had been mistaken for fear or aggression had actually been a language of love. Bella had never asked for praise. She had only asked them to listen. Months later, when the puppies were old enough to explore the yard, Rachel watched Chance race confidently across the grass while Bella followed at a peaceful distance. There was no panic in her movements now, only quiet trust. Rachel knelt beside her and rested a hand on the scar on her shoulder, the mark of a past Bella could not explain but no longer needed to hide from. Bella leaned gently into her touch and closed her eyes. Some hearts do not need words to tell the truth. They only need someone willing to believe them.